When creating a story of any sort, you have to fill in said story with a connective and cohesive series of sequences. The character choices need to make sense, the action executed well, the emotion feel real, the pacing steady, and so on. One issue that always affects any audience uncomfortability is when something doesn't make sense. So when, say, a character performs a feat that is unreasonable to do, like Bruce Wayne almost magically appearing back in Gotham despite only a few weeks ago having his back broken, losing access to his fortune, being left to rot in a pit, having zero resources at his disposal, or a means of travel. This creates a hole in a movie's plot, because information is missing that would inform us of how Batman overcame such a feat in a realistic time crunch. Thus, you have a plot hole. However, according to this guy, Patrick Willems,
they don't actually matter.
Now, some of you may have seen this video trending a little while ago, but I only recently discovered this 2x4 to my skull recently, and he is, I would say, an up-and-coming YouTuber who made this video talking about how plot holes don't matter. The title alone was intriguing to me because I thought this video was a joke or a parody of hyper-analytical movie culture, calling out every single issue with a story, no matter how small or big. Well, I was wrong, because Patrick takes the time to not only make the title of the video a serious claim, but also wrangles in real-world logical comparisons, continuity errors, and more under a single umbrella as plot holes, and says all these issues don't matter, while also stating,
Now, I know it seems impossible to watch movies wrong, but you're watching movies wrong.
Alright, let's dig into this one. Let's define a few things first, just so we are on the same page. A plot hole is a break in the story with no logical connection or reasoning. Actions and outcomes must be logical based on the character's experiences and situation. Again, Bruce getting back to Gotham despite his limitations is a plot hole. There isn't enough information to fill in reasonably how he went from point A to point D without explaining or even relevantly showing B and C. Another example that Patrick himself uses early in the video is Indiana Jones surviving a trip on the outside of the Nazi submarine along its journey. There is no explanation as to how Indiana survives within the movie itself, therefore it is a plot hole. Alright, so now that we have a foundation established with referable examples and a fair definition, let's move forward.
So, what is a plot hole? People's definitions vary, but here's the generally accepted one that I use. A plot hole is a point in which a story breaks a previously established rule about its own universe. Basically, it's when a story contradicts itself. Okay.
We literally just tripped over the starting line, Patrick. Come on. This definition is contradictory. It sets the lower limit at any small mistakes that can be overlooked, while the upper limit can encompass glaring issues like literal plot holes. In this case, lumping together plot holes with all forms of mistakes, no matter their weight, is a gross generalization and misrepresentation.
In The Dark Knight Rises, we never see how Batman gets back to Gotham City. That's a plot hole.
I literally just explained this one, so I'm not going to be a broken record here. Let's just keep going.
One of the earliest cinematic developments was the concept of montage. The idea is that when two images are presented in sequence, the audience understands that they occur chronologically and will mentally fill in the time between scenes. So for instance, if a person is in one location and the next scene they're in another location, we understand that in between scenes they traveled between the locations. Movies tend to assume that the audience is reasonably intelligent, but I guess they're wrong. If movies showed us every single second that happened during the span of the story, they would be 40 hours long and really f***ing boring.
I get why Patrick takes time to explain to us what montage is, but the problem here is that the target audience for his and other video essays about movies are people who are already genuinely interested in learning about film, so explaining to people who most likely already know what montage is like looking down your nose at the camera with a snarky attitude and makes you come off as kind of pretentious.
There are so many plot holes in A Quiet Place. Oh, it's such a great movie. I mean, like, why did they decide to have a baby? And why didn't they just move to the waterfall?
Oh, this is the one that really drives me nuts. Movies are, for the most part, about human beings, or at least characters who think and act like human beings. And you know what human beings are not? Logical. People are impulsive. They make choices based on emotion. Not everyone thinks exactly the same. And also, people make mistakes. You know how in Star Trek, Vulcans live dominated by logic, and it's established that acting logically is at odds with acting human. So if everyone acted totally logically all the time, only making the most logical decision in any situation, no one would be acting human. Thus, there would be no conflict, which would lead to no drama, which would lead to no stories. And movies would be really f***ing boring.
Now, this is a fair point. Not all characters in movies have to be 100% logical all the time. However, characters shouldn't act uncharacteristic either. Again, if a character does something based on what they have gone through, that is justified. If a character were to make an action based on no logical reasoning explained, before, during, or after the moment, that is a plot hole, and the character suffers as the writing is bad. Characters can't be random. There is no simpler way to say it.
There is a huge plot hole in Star Wars. I mean, come on. Why would the Death Star have such an obvious design flaw?
Okay, some of these can be valid complaints. Sometimes there's a story development that's a little too convenient. Like in the 2009 Star Trek, Kirk just happens to get stranded on the same planet as old Spock, and they end up in the same cave together so Spock can explain what's going on. I like the movie, but that's a little contrived and lazy. But it's not a plot hole.
There are two problems with this first example. One, the exhaust port exploited to destroy the Death Star doesn't break any rules in that universe. And two, this is really fun nerd shit, the weakness is mentioned to be an exhaust port. There is no way a weapon that generates as much heat as the Death Star would not need an exhaust port of equal size or greater. So yes, while Patrick is correct about this not being a plot hole, there is something he missed here. This is essential to the narrative, and thus is willing to be overlooked for the sake of having an adventure to tell. As for the Star Trek example, same thing applies. Though highly unlikely, there are no broken rules. I agree with Patrick on these examples with reservation, but they are still leaps in the natural flow of storytelling and deserve to be acknowledged as a weakness.
I mean, how does Benicio del Toro know the rebels' plans? Nobody told him. That's a plot hole.
At least 50% of the plot holes that I see people complain about are things that are actually explained in the movie if you just pay attention. Like that one in The Last Jedi, there's a scene where you see DJ listening as Poe tells Finn and Rose the Resistance's plan. But I guess if you're too busy live tweeting about plot holes, you can miss some stuff.
Correct, that is not a plot hole, and is a mistake that is common, yes. However, your point here, Patrick, isn't about explaining why that isn't a plot hole, but rather you talking down to other people, and that is my problem with this video that I will conclude with later.
If you want, you can find plot holes anywhere. They're all over your favorite movies. In Lord of the Rings, the Eagles could have just flown the ring to Mount Doom and saved everyone all that trouble. In Toy Story, why does Buzz freeze like the other toys when he thinks he's a real person? In Ocean's 11, how did they get the flyers into the vault? In Cinderella, why does the glass slipper stay when everything else disappears? In Alien, if the acid can melt through the floor, why doesn't it melt through the entire ship? In Gremlins, what does after midnight technically mean? Isn't it always after midnight? How does that rule make any sense? In Star Wars, why does the Death Star have a trash compactor when they can just jettison the trash into space? Look, if you want to watch stuff this way, you can even find plot holes in this video. Why am I wearing sunglasses if I'm inside? I'm indoors in one shot and outdoors in the next, but we never see me go outside. Plot hole.
This is incredibly disingenuous. Many of these examples fall under the order of narrative plot hole, like we just spoke about, how it can be overlooked. Something that would outright prevent the film from ever occurring, like the Eagles transporting the Fellowship in Lord of the Rings to Mount Doom. Or a logical plot hole, like sharks don't roar and there are no explosions in space. If these problems were accounted for, then either there would be no story, or the story would be extremely dull. And as stated before with Patrick's definition, the lower limit of trivial mistakes that can be overlooked are combined with the upper limit of glaring issues that can't be overlooked. This is the problem with his definition, because he uses it as a way to both talk down to us for caring about the quality of film while also mocking us. Though again, these are still plot holes and deserve to be acknowledged as mistakes.
You can find plot holes or logic gaps in any movie, and if you want to, go right ahead. Just don't tell me that those are genuine flaws and problems and reasons that a movie is bad, because they're not. None of these things actually matter.
Yes, they are problems. You don't ignore unbalanced mechanics in a game, terrible rhythm in a tune, broken vocals in a song, or mistakes in film. These are mistakes that we can measure or compare to objective standards that we have set in the respective fields. Do you even hear yourself?
Because they're not what a movie is about. So even though most people are using the term plot hole incorrectly, all of these complaints are rooted in the same thing. But movies aren't about logic. They're not equations, they're not proofs, they're not puzzles. Movies are not math. Remember that guy in your freshman dorm who would always try to guess the endings of movies so that he could prove that he was smarter than the people who made them? Well, now everyone is turning into that guy.
Agreed, but they are meant to be an experience that still has to make sense. I tried to avoid being a broken record, and I am sorry that I have failed here, guys, but he's just a living run-on sentence.
On the site movieplotholes.com, there are 7 plot holes listed for Die Hard. The first one says that the villain's plan is to stage a hostage situation so that the police will shut down power to the building, allowing them to access the vault. But since they would have already had detailed plans of the building, they could have just shut down power themselves, making the whole thing more simple. Now,
that plot hole does not matter, because it doesn't detract from the story. But it is a problem with the writing and should have been reviewed.
Take Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. At the climax of the story, Harry reaches the Triwizard Cup, which turns out to have been turned into a port key that transports him to Voldemort. So the villain's whole plan hinged on Harry being the one to get to the cup first and win the tournament. But really, any random object could have been turned into a port key, and they could have sent him to Voldemort way earlier without all that hassle. But that doesn't matter. We're so invested in Harry trying to figure out a way to win, and then so surprised by the reveal of the port key and Voldemort returning, that to pick apart the logic of the villain's plan would mean totally disengaging from the story. This, like so many plot holes, are things that would just destroy any conflict or drama and end the story immediately.
Alright, this is a forgivable mistake. Voldemort, throughout the series, shows that he has taken a liking to certain objects that he has an attachment to. This isn't a completely unbelievable pick for Voldemort and the Death Eaters, as it is a narrative plot hole and can be overlooked.
Like, sure, to an objective, omniscient viewer, it would make logical sense for Admiral Holdo to tell Poe Dameron her plan. And then there would be no conflict and no drama. Poe would never send Finn on a mission, and Finn would never grow, and Poe would never grow, and there would be no story. And also, Holdo explains why she doesn't tell him the plan. She doesn't trust him. He just f***ed up and got demoted. She has no reason to. Again, if you think this is a plot hole, or you're annoyed because of the logic here, you're kinda watching movies wrong.
Holdo's choice to not inform Poe of the plan makes no sense, even within the context of the film. She disregards him on an extremely shallow reason you can't forgive given the circumstances the Resistance is in, and the fact that Holdo is exclusively there to serve the plot, all while ironically preventing the plot from going anywhere. Almost like Ryan Johnson doesn't know what he's doing. Well, no, I fucking know. And she continues to do this even when Poe executes a mutiny. This is Fable 3 levels of stupidity and terrible leadership. Just tell everybody what the fuck is going on. And I don't need to go any further here with this example, because the internet is flooded with pretty much every single reason explaining why this movie is one of the worst films of the last 5 years, so let's just move on.
There's an episode of the show Community that imagines what a horror movie would look like if all the characters only made totally logical decisions.
Should we go check it out?
No. We should call 911 on my fully charged cell phone, lock the doors, and then stand back to back in the middle of the room holding knives.
And the conclusion is that it would be really boring.
The clip you used of Community was those writers' way of parodying something they enjoy by acknowledging a set of clearly fatal flaws the characters make in film. I'm tired of saying this. These are legitimate problems, and the writers should be held accountable.
I am in no way telling you to turn your brain off or to not think critically about movies. Not at all. I'm saying you should worry about the things that actually matter. So, take Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. I think it's a bad movie, and it has big old dumb logic issues, like why can Superman locate Lois Lane from her heartbeat but can't find his mother the same way? Why doesn't Wonder Woman, who isn't affected by kryptonite, be the one to use the spear against Doomsday? But those aren't the real problems with the movie. The actual problems are that many of the central characters are totally static and poorly motivated, and they don't learn anything or grow through the story, and the one major moment of growth is caused by a ridiculous plot contrivance. So as much as I enjoy making fun of some dumb logic gaps in that movie, they still don't really matter.
I know it's hard for you to recognize that you're being a pretentious fuckwit, but that has to be one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. All of the issues you have laid out before you are errors in film. You said that you don't want to turn our brains off, only to shortly thereafter tell us that we're wrong for including plot holes under the list of mistakes in film. Is your head up your ass for the warmth?
Why is it that in the 80s or 90s or early 2000s, no one really cared about plot holes? They still existed, but no one ever complained a movie was bad because of all the plot holes. So what happened? Basically, the internet. Because I like driving myself insane, I searched back through Google year by year for references to plot holes. And immediately, the types of videos that proved most popular were humorous analyses of popular movies focusing on surface-level nitpicks. And over the next several years, these types of videos grew in number and popularity. For many people, especially millennials and whatever the generation after millennials is called, most film criticism they consume is on YouTube. And not all, but a lot of this is surface-level critique, focusing on nitpicks, and chief among those nitpicks, plot holes. Plot holes don't really mean anything, but they're good clickbait, and those videos get views, and they multiply. And people watch them and believe them and repeat those points in conversation. And when they watch movies, they think about these surface-level nitpicks. They look for them. No one is really to blame for this. Okay, CinemaSins definitely deserves some of the blame. But it's not just them. This is way bigger. This is about cultural shifts coinciding with evolving technology. And look, as long as movies are popular and people on the internet are making videos for clicks, it's going to keep happening. So look, watch whatever YouTube videos you want, think whatever you want about movies, just please.
CinemaSins aren't reviewers, they're assholes. They make arbitrary critiques not to be taken seriously, but rather for comedy. And no, I won't back down from this point that plot holes, among other flaws, have become a common target for audiences worldwide. Moviegoers becoming more aware of issues throughout film means that people are becoming more knowledgeable, which means that writers have to create new and unique stories of a higher caliber than we are accustomed to. It's a win-win. We get better movies and experiences, and the movie makers are then justified accordingly. Who died and made you God to tell us that we are wrong and indirectly stupid for watching film differently than you? Why do you get to act like the end-all be-all authority, stating that only some problems warrant true criticism while others get a pass? Don't you think that by stating some films get passes while others don't does not give proper credit to writers and filmmakers who busted their asses off to give us the best experience they possibly could, while films that have more issues and aren't deserving of our praise are, by your measurements, nearly equal? For this large minority or small minority of moviegoers that do care for a movie to be coherent, characters to be fleshed out, animation to be beautiful, and so on, you are saying that their opinions don't matter when it comes to how they prefer to analyze film for their enjoyment. If a film is bad, it is bad. If a film has problems, those problems should be confirmed as such. Instead of simply stating that you don't look for plot holes as part of your experience, you made a video talking down to us like we're children. And that doesn't fly with me. Hello everybody. I haven't made anything movie related in quite some time, and I wanted to take the time to do this right, which is why it took me a lot longer to write this. And for as ironic as it sounds, I don't bear Patrick any ill will, but his video was just too misinforming to not counter, for both my own sake and defending objective criticism as well. And please, if you want to join in the conversation, go ahead, comment down below. I would like to hear what you say. I'll probably make more of these video essays and just kind of see where this goes, and if people enjoy the content, then I'll continue to do so. In the meantime, thanks for watching, guys, and have a good day.